Amy Stapleton, welcome to Lingofest.
Hey, thanks. It's good to be here.
Thank you for making the time. I really appreciate it. We've known each other for multiple years. We're fellow travelers, I would say,
Yeah.
in the world of voice. And before we get to all the great exciting stuff in voice, I was looking at your LinkedIn, and I had noticed before that you did some work at NASA, but I hadn't looked at it closely. Then I saw that you had spent like 14 years there.
hmm
I want to start from there, if you don't mind. You can share like what you did there and how that has informed your, your growth towards where you are today. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's kind of a weird story how I got there. I'm sure. I mean, some people have heard it before, but I actually, I have a PhD in German literature. And
Wow.
so I was studying over in Germany and I decided I wanted to stay over there and ended up getting a job as a translator with the German software company SAP. And then kind of like fast forward, I came back to the States and was a consultant in the 90s actually, and then in 2001 NASA was putting in SAP's financial management application because like all government organizations, they have a lot of financial accounting and reporting that they have to do up to the federal government and show how they're using this allocation of funds and whatever. So they were looking to hire someone that had some knowledge of SAP and actually the development environment, like I was a developer. So I went on and I was supposed to only stay like for a year. They actually hired me as a civil servant, but I just enjoyed it. I mean, it was kind of a neat place to work. You got to see the astronauts would come and, show videos of what they were doing. And it was kind of an exciting job. And I had a really good boss at the time. So I just ended up staying, for 14 years. I was in Huntsville, Alabama at the Marshall Space Flight Center, which was where they did a lot of the enterprise applications. And so I started out in SAP and then I became, kind of like a branch chief over a lot of their enterprise applications, had a lot of responsibilities for putting in all kinds of different things. And at the very end, before I retired, I was over their end user services. So having to manage the contract that was sending out everybody's laptops and mobile phones. And that was a real interesting way to end my NASA career there. So yeah, I was able to retire like early at the end of 2015, and that was perfect timing to get into voice. So I mean, going from a big government organization to then becoming more entrepreneurial and being able to do stuff in voice, but I still remember a lot of the methodologies that we used and creating those big software projects. And one thing I learned, I guess, is also just, things take time. I mean, you can't do stuff overnight. And, as long as you don't give up and you keep going, you'll probably get there eventually. So.
Wow. Okay. Well, the first thing I'm going to ask is how did you manage to go from PhD in German lit? How did you live? What skills did you get the skills just left and right? And how did you end up being a technical person?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it all started with that SAP job. I mean, I was lucky that they were looking for translators. That was still a big company. It's and it was very up and coming. And I applied for a job there. It was actually like 1989 when I applied. I ended up working there in 1990 as a translator, and I did translation. They had like all these problem notes they needed to translate from German into English.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that job, but I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. And so I actually turned in my resignation to my boss, and he invited me to become a developer. So it was kind of because of him that I got into the more technical side, and they actually trained me to be a developer developing in their ABAP programming language. And, that was the start of my career. I just really enjoyed it. It was I was never good at math, but I always liked science. And then being a translator, I kind of learned how to, get into programming. And I guess they say if you like languages, you like programming. So that sort of worked out. But I mean, I was really lucky. And I think a lot of people are like me now. they have degrees in humanities, and now they're transitioning into something like voice and conversational design. So it's nice that more types of backgrounds and people feel like they can get into these technical careers where really, I mean, they're needed, because you need different perspectives.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. I guess, I mean, first by two things. Number one, that your boss would have said to you, "Can you try this?"
Yeah.
Maybe he probably saw that you're smart and all that, and then that you were like, "Wait a minute, I'm not that. I'm not a programmer." That you actually, you know, and I can see where because I think like translation, um there's a lot of methodology, right? How
Hmm.
you go about translating, right? And also
Yeah.
it's very systematic, more or less. There's a lot of art in it, I think, but there's a lot of science, no? Because I'm not a translator.
Well, I mean, I'm not really a translator either. I mean,
Mhm.
I did the job as best as I could. I tried to understand
Yeah,
what was
yeah,
going on.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
hard for me because I didn't really know all the technical stuff about.
True,
It was
true,
really more
true.
not technical, but more
Mm.
business
Yeah,
application
yeah.
specific, right?
And you
And
did
some of it was,
literature. Yeah.
yeah, and some of it was technical. But it's also kind of an aside, an interesting story. When I was there in 1990, they already had like a machine, they called it machine translation
Wow.
department. It was one lady,
Mm,
it was
mm.
one young lady, and she was feeding all this stuff in and getting all that stuff out. And I don't even know exactly what the underlying technology of it was at the time, but they were looking already then
Yeah,
towards trying
yeah.
to automate some of this translation.
Yep,
It'd be
yep.
interesting, how much of that is automated today. I'm sure a large portion of it
Large
is automated.
portion.
At the
Yeah,
time, it was
yeah,
terrible. I
yeah,
mean, you'd get
yeah.
stuff back and it would just, we'd sit around and we'd laugh at it because it was
Mm.
so horribly wrong. But thank goodness, they didn't work because they had to hire me. So
Yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah.
exactly, exactly. Well, before we move on, so can you, what did you do in German? Because I like one of my favorite books is the Woes of Young Werther by Goethe, right?
Yeah,
That's like it's if anybody out there has not read that book, you should read it. It's an easy read and it's beautiful and
that
it's
is a good
amazing.
book. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Tell me a little bit if you could about your PhD.
well, what's so funny is, and my boss at NASA always made fun of me for this. I actually wrote my dissertation on German science fiction.
Mm,
So I was always kind of interested in science, like I said, and I did some stuff on German science fiction, and it had kind of an ecological bent to it. But yeah, that's what I wrote it on, and I guess it kind of worked out, but that I ended up working for NASA after writing it on German science fiction. So
no, that's well, I mean, the moral of the story, in my or one of the morals of the story is don't box yourself into anything really, right?
yeah,
I think you should see yourself as an evolving collection of skills, and then look at for opportunities and do things that you that will allow you to grow and so forth. So I'm always telling
yeah,
this to young folks, like, don't say I am X, right? And
right.
I cannot do anything else, right? You are a lot more than whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I would just say too, like if anybody's watching that's younger, I think it was I realized that SAP was a really good and up and coming company, but my role in the company as a translator, I knew that wasn't going to be a good growth opportunity for me. So when I did get the option of trying to do something, a different role and stepping up, even though it was
Mhm.
beyond my comfort zone, obviously,
Yeah.
I did that. And looking back, that was like a pivotal decision for me. So I agree, don't box yourself in, but do look for opportunities, and you'll probably, find them. And if you do have a chance to go after it, then definitely do so.
Yeah, yeah, and think ahead, right? Okay, and it's
Right.
like you did. It's like I don't think this is gonna last for long, whatever. Or maybe think ahead in terms of, yeah, this is gonna last, but I'm not gonna enjoy it. Right. So thinking ahead is one of those things that young people don't do very well.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
I don't know, it's, if you're able to like spot opportunities, because I did work with several translators that had similar opportunities but didn't take them, and which kind of
Mm,
surprised me that they didn't
mm,
see the
mm,
potential in the
mm,
company.
mhm.
And there's a lot of opportunities today that are going on. I mean, everything that's happening in Web3,
Yeah.
it's some of it's very hard to understand, but there are huge opportunities there. And
Yep.
instead of just being like a naysayer and saying, I don't like
Yeah. Yeah.
XYZ or whatever,
Try it.
be
Yeah.
open,
Be
right?
open. Yeah.
Because mm,
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, learn. I mean, that's a lot of. I think there's a lot of misconception and bad decision making, because people just have a bad understanding of something, right? They don't
Yeah.
understand crypto. They don't understand it, right? So they dismiss it as a category, as a fad. It reminds me of the days of the internet where people they're like dismissing the web as a fad. Uh,
Yeah,
it's
I mean, you
funny.
have to be careful. You have to be careful, like not to get on certain bandwagons,
That's
think
true.
for
Not
think for
bandwagons.
yourself.
Yeah,
And
but keep open. Keep open.
yeah,
Those are the sort of very important principles, right? Keep open, but don't be a fool, right?
yeah, right.
you know, because there is a lot of opportunity for foolishness out there, and I see it all the time. And then I bumped into you, and when you were at Opus, no?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So when I was still working at NASA and I knew that I wanted to retire early just because I wanted to do something more entrepreneurial, I had started writing like a blog about
Mm,
virtual agents, is what we were kind of calling it at the time. Because I was like
mm,
people weren't really saying voice assistants because voice assistants didn't, exist in that way.
mhm.
So I started writing a blog and just doing my research. And I went to some of the conferences. Speech Tech was a big one back then, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Dan Miller and I had communications over Twitter, and so they invited me to be an analyst, just like kind of part time once I retired, and I did that for a couple of years, and that was really good. I mean, that's a great organization. They put on some fantastic conferences, do a lot of research, and so yeah, I think that's where we met first, maybe at one of their conversational AI
Or
conferences or
probably a
whatever.
speech tech. I think way
It may
back.
have been Speech Tech too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, people who are watching don't know that speech check was a massive thing way back,
Oh
right?
yeah.
It
Right.
was like that was the place to be, and it was. I remember, I think things went down when they moved the venue from New York to DC. You know, it used to be in Manhattan,
Yeah.
same hotel, the Marquee in Times Square, and all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I went to one of them in DC. Do they still even have it now? Or
They do, yeah, they do have it. Not,
okay.
but I think Debbie Doll is in charge of it now. Hopefully,
Okay.
and they're, I think hopefully she'll, because she's a really good person, a hard worker, and all
Yeah.
that. I think and she's involved with the youngsters, right? The new generation, let's call them. And she's involved heavily, so hopefully, they'll infuse some blood into it, because it's amazing. I mean, I remember, I started going to it in the 90s. I remember how the size of the conference would swell and go down, swell. It reflected basically the space, the
Yeah.
voice space, right? So the voice space, there was a lot of enthusiasm, and then it dies down. There was another a push for not more enthusiasm. I remember once it was big, and then 2 years later it shrank to like 3 rooms, right? And it was
Hmm.
just basically I think it was like after the bust. I think the bubble burst, right? And I think during that time for a couple of years it was
Yeah.
shrinking, because everything was shrinking, and then it came back roaring. But I think that's where probably we met, and speech tech was for the longest time about speech technology, but also heavily IVR.
Hmm.
And what's interesting about IVR is that it's the technology that people think is going to die, but it only does one thing, which is it
You just
grows.
can't kill it.
You can't scale it. It keeps on growing. No, I mean, it's even today, people now, like people who have been doing speech, they came into speech via Alexa and all.
Yeah.
They discovered that the money is at the IVR, and so
Right.
they're going there, which is fine, right? Because
Yeah.
if people are picking up the phone and calling, and you can deliver great automation. So the poo-pooing of IVR, the IVR people are laughing all the way to the bank, let's just say,
Yeah.
and that's
Well,
fine.
you know what I remember though, at Speech Tech was the first place where I saw Jibo. And I think it was I think it
Probably
might have been like 2014 or even
14, 14 or 15. I think it came out in 13.
I think it was 14 that I forgot the
14.
guy's name that was there, and he demoed it. And that was like this eureka moment for me. When I saw Jibo, I thought to myself, these things are going to be big. Of course, I was wrong. And I also thought these are all like technology people and linguists and stuff, but I'm a storyteller, and these,
Yeah.
these characters are going to need
Mhm.
stories to tell.
Yeah.
So that's when I had the idea to kind of go off into that path. But it's been very interesting and somewhat disappointing for me to see how like the landscape has evolved.
Yeah.
Because when Alexa came out, I was like, I don't really like the way it works. I don't like the fact that it's this invocation, intent-based model. Because I was used to more like think, Pandora bots where you would interact with a bot and you could pretty much say anything and it wasn't like looking for a specific intent. You were just like trying to have a conversation with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, and it's also been disappointing to me that the social robots that, well, it's disappointing that Jibo didn't work out. I think it
Well,
had
yeah. Go ahead.
the idea was right. It just I understand for a lot of different reasons that it didn't work. But
Well, I think it was a little bit ahead of its time, to be honest with you. Number one, I think they tried to do too many things
yeah,
when
definitely.
the MVP was not very well defined. And then they just set the expectations so high that
Yeah.
it was impossible almost to succeed. I think there is actually the good news is that category is now focused on specific use cases, which is
Right. Like,
which is how I'm sorry.
yeah. Well, like LEQ and Moxie and those. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So
Mhm.
I think that's the way to go. I mean, if you create anything that's general purpose, it's gonna be hard, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't know how to market it. You cannot focus on making it as good as possible and so on. So those guys, I think, they may go places. I think definitely. Is it LQ? Is it how? Is it what it's called? Right? Ellie, right?
LEQ is the
LQ.
thing.
Yeah.
Intuition Robotics is the company.
Right. For
But
all the
let me ask you this though. Do you think that Amazon is kind of like backing their way into a social robot slowly by all the stuff that they're doing with their, with their different Echo shows? And I forgot the one that, now moves around and sort of looks
yeah,
at
yeah, yeah.
you.
That's Astro. I think, yeah, Astro, I think is the beginning of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it does, it goes around the house, so it's part of the family now, and it can go and get things for you, and so there's interaction.
Does it talk too though?
Yeah, there's
Does it?
Alexa, right, in it.
Okay, so it has Alexa built
Y-
into Astro,
Yeah,
or does it
yeah.
have its own personality?
So you say Astro. You call Astro. That's the wake word.
Does it use the Alexa voice, or does it have
I don't know. I
a
think it
dog
uses.
sounding voice?
It's a good point, right? I have not. Is it available now? Oh.
I think some people have, like, I heard they pre-ordered it. I don't know if
There's
it's been.
it's like by invitation probably or something like that, right? In any
Yeah.
case, I think they're going there.
Hmm.
I think they're going there. Here's the thing I'm going to share with everybody, right? Once in a while, I post on LinkedIn and like a post, right, a question or whatever,
Yeah.
and I posted something on Moxie.
Hmm.
There was a lot of reaction to it, right? And you, as the poster, you get to see what companies are looking at your thing, right?
Hmm.
And then so I always, there's Amazon, but for this one, the Amazon portion was just off the charts,
Oh, really?
right? So I was like,
Mhm.
how come they're so interested in this conversation? Because it was a good thread. There was a lot of conversation about Moxie. Is it a
Yeah.
good thing? Is it a bad thing? Um, is it something that will offload parenting? Parents will just
Yeah.
use the thing, right?
I'm
Or is it?
always.
Yeah. I mean, it's a debate. I mean, again, it's a use case. If somebody
Yeah.
is in the spectrum and it helps them and makes their life better, right? For sure, right? So anyway, the point is there was a nice, interesting debate and we went on and on, but there was a massive interest I saw from the Amazon people, and I'm like, and actually, I think I pinged a couple of people, not in Amazon, but I think it was Brett Kinsella. I said, hey, I have a data point for you. Um, I don't, I, it's just data
Yeah.
point that there is a lot of interest. Maybe you want to go and investigate and see if these guys are doing anything. Um, I would not be surprised, obviously, right? These guys, Amazon, are always doing something behind the scenes, right? And so, yeah, my answer to you is, I think, yeah, and I think they've already started doing it with this thing, this
Yeah.
Astro, yeah. Um,
Yeah. And to go back to Moxie, I mean, I saw that, probably a year before you posted it. I was sort of watching them, what they were doing. I mean, I'm really impressed with the technology. Again, I have seen demos of that, and I understand what they're doing with it. And I also like the fact that you can have, it asks, the Moxie will ask the child to tell it, tell him, I think it's a boy, I can't remember, but Moxie will ask the child to tell it about the child's day, and we'll sit there and listen and like nod and stuff, which is something you can't do with Alexa right now, and which I wish I could do more with the characters that that we have in our Storyteller Cafe thing. But you know, with some of the technology that they are using with Moxie and their speech recognition, and also the different type of storytellings that they do is really, it's very impressive. I mean, I think it's whether it's going to work or not, if there's a market for it, and based on the price, all of that's kind of challenging, but it's one of the better implementations of a social robot that I've seen.
Yeah, no. Well, so let me plug a friend of mine, who is on the advisory board there, and actually, his name is Hassan Sawaf. You heard the name Hassan Sawaf?
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, he's a big guy in terms of within the speech and all, on the technology side of things, and he has now a company called Explain. And what it is, Explain, and you probably should check it out.
Okay.
Is sort of, it's a place where if you have a piece of technology or you have whatever, right? He wants to create a sort of a flat place, democratic place where you, for example, you are the group at Moxie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you want to have some speech recognition specific for your use case, right? And so when you go there, you see a lot of people who are offering speech recognition. You have Amazon is there and all, but there are others that that may be more suitable for your use case. So, for example, Moxie, he was telling me the story, and actually we talked about this in my interview with him a few weeks ago. He was telling me, he was giving me as an example of how the fact that you have the ability to access all these technologies out there, small groups working on a very specific problem, delivering something that Amazon is not interested in delivering, enable them to deliver something that is superior in terms of its performance, because they're able to go and shop, as opposed to you build it on the Amazon stack. So maybe the TTS is good, but
Right.
so you're sort of stuck right here.
Yeah. You're definitely limited if you're building on top of the Alexa platform.
Alexa platform, there may be a couple
Yeah.
of things that are good, but what he and his company provide is the ability to pick the best for your use case, and they've created a layer that allows you to use them, within. So anyway, that
sounds interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very interesting actually what he's doing, what his team is doing. I think right now, I think what is needed really is quality, like you're saying, right? Okay, so the idea, I think, is great, right? Social robots. I think quality can be had because of technologies now being accessible. And secondly, I think quality comes from use case. If you have a very well-defined use case,
Yeah.
you can build against it specifically, as opposed to you just, building something that sometimes works well, but often does not, because you haven't tuned it.
Correct. Yeah, and you can constrain like the use cases, and what are people going to ask? So yeah.
Yep. Okay, so you have two companies now, where I am pretty sure you're having a lot of fun, right?
I just have one. I have one company.
Well, I have two names here. I have Chattables and Tellables. So
Okay,
maybe
yeah.
you can
So,
tell us how they're related. Maybe go ahead. Sorry.
well, Tellables was the previous company, and it's kind of been transformed into Chattables. So I have a new partner with Chattables. Wayne Richards, my partner.
Mhm.
We kind of like took some of the learnings from Tellables and then transitioned it into Chattables, and that's what I've been doing since like 2020. So been almost exactly 2 years now. And with Tellables, I was still experimenting with different types of storytelling. Started to do that with Chattables, and then we created the Storyteller Cafe voice app. And what happened was we've kind of like gone into age tech now. So last year, my mom she was in assisted living, and she was quarantined because of the lockdown for about 1.5 years. She couldn't see any of my family members, and it took a real toll on her physically and mentally. And I saw that, and I also knew what we were trying to do with with our Storyteller Cafe voice app. And so I thought, this is probably talking again about trying to find a real target audience and a use case. I thought age tech is the space. So what we're doing now is we're specifically crafting these these virtual characters. So there are 4 virtual characters in the Storyteller Cafe. And the whole point is that they're trying to help isolated older adults, people that can't get out and socialize, to have some friendly conversation. So you can go into the cafe and, Alex will greet you by your name, and you can have a chat with him and one or more of the other virtual characters, and they have different types of content. They'll lead you through an interactive skit, or like a little fun memory game, or they'll talk to you about some kind of trivia with celebrities. And every day that you come in, there's also like a fun little news item to encourage you to keep coming back. So that's the general concept. And again, it's just right now, it's an Alexa voice skill. You don't see anybody. There's no visuals. You're just having these conversations, and you have to kind of pay attention to what's going on. But I kind of like the idea of not just having one character, like Moxie, LEQ. It's just a one-on-one. I like the idea of you being in a social setting where you're dealing with multiple, friends, multiple characters, and you hear them talking, but they're including you in the conversation. So it works like different parts of your brain.
So is it on the store now?
Yeah, it's available only in the US, and it's called Storyteller Cafe. So if you say, Alexa, open Storyteller Cafe, you should be able to get to it.
Okay. And how are you monetizing this? Are you?
Right now, we're not really. I mean, we started out by putting in let's see, what's it called? We had a digital currency inside the cafe that was a consumable, so you could buy coins. And we really wanted we wanted the users to like buy coins and reward the authors if they like the story, but you can't. Reward is not something that's currently allowed within the Amazon monetization model. You can't just offer rewards. So we sold like premium content. Weren't really getting much traction with that, so we just kind of we have it more or less turned off right now. But if we can get an audience, then the idea would be to go with like a subscription.
Okay. Well, you and I should talk, because I think I have an opportunity for you within the work that we're doing it with Lingo.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I just applied to like an AARP pitch competition. The AARP has an innovation lab, and they're trying to, find companies that have innovative solutions within the market for, again, there's all kinds of needs that people have with the 50 and older market. I just think that there is definitely a place for voice technology and helping isolated older adults. I mean, we've seen that just having an Alexa in your home helps people feel less lonely, especially if you could do like drop-in calls and things like that. But your family members are not always available to drop in. And so I thought, well, I'm just very intrigued by the idea of virtual characters, and having come up with some way to use interactive content to keep people engaged. So that's what we're focused on.
No, I think I think focusing on the older population is I think is smart. There's, first of all, there's money there, and there's value to be delivered.
Yeah,
for sure, right? And so so after this, you and I will talk. We'll talk business.
all right. Sounds good.
Sounds good, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you. I have my opinions, but I want to poke at you, get your opinions about.
All right.
It's been now what, 6 years, more than that?
Yeah.
Since Alexa came out, right? 2014, 7 years maybe. Yeah, 7 years, right? I'm disappointed, to be honest with you, in terms of progress. I thought I really had some ideas back then that 2 years from now, I think this problem is going to be solved, and oh yeah, of course, 5 years from now, this and this will be solved, right? And none of that got solved, to be honest with you. And so I was talking to somebody about that yesterday, and I was like, wait a minute, what have they been doing, these folks, all this time, right? So what do you think about, first of all, what are you disappointed? What are your thoughts about that? Your feelings first, and then what are your thoughts about,
I don't actually, just as you were asking me that question, I kind of thought of this analogy of going back to NASA. Getting to the moon was like really, really hard, and we got to the moon, and then what happened, right?
Mm,
for a whole generation, like nothing really is happening. And I think part of that is because, getting to the moon really was hard, but getting beyond the moon is like really, really, really hard. And it takes a lot of money. And it also, there's just, you're confronted with a whole bunch of even harder challenges to solve. And sometimes it's, as human beings, we're just like, it just takes us a while to get there once we got past that first thing. I think, having something like Alexa was almost like getting to the moon. If you go back to what I was talking about earlier, and like machine translation and where we were in the 1989 or whatever, and where we've come now with automatic speech recognition and far field microphones and all that stuff. I mean, it's pretty amazing technology, right? But to get to the point, to me, where where you're like on Jupiter, or let's say colonizing Mars, that for me is like you are having a real true conversation with, again, passing the Turing test or whatever you want to use. But you think about the social bots that are available now, and even though there's a ton of really advanced technology in there, they're horrible, right? I mean, it's just amazing how bad they are, and it's amazing how bad Amazon Alexa is when you just, when you try to do a lot of normal things. So why is it that we haven't progressed further? I mean, I just think it's a really hard problem to solve. And I'm seeing a lot of stuff happening with, GPT-3, and now what's coming next after GPT-3, a lot of these other, transformer-based models, they're like so close, but yet still really far away, which is kind of comforting for someone that likes to write stories by hand, like come up with stories. It's going to be a while before you have an auto-generated, content thing, a robot that's going to be able to really create compelling narratives and stories. I think it's going to happen. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I guess, again, to try to, wrap up, I personally think it's because conversational AI has not advanced. I think that's kind of a contrarian opinion. Most people don't think people want to talk to Amazon Alexa like they want to talk to a person. But I kind of think people do if it was possible,
yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that you want to have like conversations like you would with your, your best friend, but you want to be able to talk to it like you talk to a person, and not have to wake it up every time you want to ask something. And people have just learned that it just doesn't, it's very stupid. So you can only do certain very rudimentary things, right? I'm going to ask it to play a song, and that's pretty much it. Maybe I'll ask it to turn it down, but then I'm not going to go into a lot of, extended conversations about it, right? So I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah,